All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the UND Grad Talk podcast. This is a podcast where we bring on master students or former master students from the University of North Dakota to share the mic, talk about their graduate school experience and what they are doing right now. Today, we are joined by Morgan Giuseponi and Alex Blumenthal. So I appreciate you guys hopping on, and yeah, let's get after it here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All
Yeah, thank
right.
you for having us.
So, I mean, we'll just kind of hop into just what you guys are doing up to right now, just your daily work life. Yeah, I mean, just how's life been? Where are you guys at right now? We'll start with you, Morgan.
Yeah, so right now we're primarily working on the roads mission. My kind of position with the roads mission is more on the project management side. So I focus on tasking and scheduling, coordinating with our vendor AVS. We're currently doing our training phase. So they're teaching us satellite operations so that way we can kind of start teaching new space operation group members that same satellite operations.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. What about you, Alex? Same stuff?
Yeah, pretty similar. Yeah, pretty much the similar work that Morgan's doing. I also contribute a little bit on the some of the technical aspects of the project. So, for example, we have our Doppler tracking mission within the roads mission itself, kind of a secondary objective. So, help out a little bit with that, as well as some of the other, components of the ground station, learning about the different subsystems of the spacecraft. So my official role in the space operations group is the program manager. So I've been in SOG for about 3 years now. So again, my role is kind of split between, I want to say 50% management and 50% technical at this point.
Okay. And then, yeah, just curious, how did you guys get to where you're at right now? I don't know. Just give the viewers a little timeline. Yeah, I'll start with you again, Morgan.
Yeah, so I started my Master's of Space Studies back in 2022, that summer, and it wasn't until about 2 years in when I was going to start my independent research, I reached out to my advisor, Dr. Favig. And initially, I was on the management track, so it didn't really align with he's the engineering professor for space studies. So he pitched the idea of roads and having someone come on as Alex was initially going to be transitioning out to kind of have a managerial aspect of the mission. And I moved out here to North Dakota, and I've been involved now for about a year. So it just kind of it was a happenstance. I just ended up working out, so it was super cool.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so I always I kind of knew about the space studies master's program for quite a few years, even before starting. Did a little bit of research in undergrad when I was pursuing my bachelor's of science degree. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with the program, what type of work I wanted to do, what type of research, what professor I'd work with. But I did start in fall of 2022. And about a month in, I remember this exact moment sitting at the table in the space studies department. And the chair of the department, Dr. De Leon, comes up to me and he says, "Hey Alex, I think Dr. Fevig has a pretty cool satellite project if you'd like to work with him and be a GRA." And I was like, "Sure, why not?" Without even giving a second thought to it, not knowing what it would entail, what type of work would go into, satellite operations, because at that point, again, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I just said, yeah, let's learn about it. Let's learn something new and see how it goes.
Okay. Yeah, kind of to build off that, Alex, what are your, daily steps with like a big project like this or kind of like, yeah, what you were talking about. You said you didn't really know. Did you just get thrown into it? Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I would say it was very incremental, and the daily activities have certainly changed over time. So initially, I didn't really know every single aspect of the roads mission. I was kind of just told, hey, maybe you should research into Doppler tracking a little bit, see how that's done. So, Dr. Feve gave me a radio and a computer and just said, hey, figure out how to track satellites in orbit using this Doppler method. So we did some experiments with the ground station. Actually, if you're familiar with the lunar Mars analog habitat, our old mobile ground station is right next to that, the trailer with that big antenna. So that's where we did a lot of our initial testing for Doppler tracking. And then I was briefed on the ground station that we actually just got built on top of Odegaard not too long after that. So then my work kind of transitioned more into systems engineering. So understanding how satellite ground stations are designed, how they're built, how they communicate with satellites. And then over the next couple of years, as we started to onboard new members, I did transition into more of a managerial role, similar to how Morgan is working currently, just because we had a lot more people, there was a lot more work to get done, and so there was more delegation that needed to be done for both the undergraduate and the graduate students in the group.
Okay. Yeah, Morgan, when you first got to UND here, did you kind of similar question? Did you know what you were getting into initially, or was it a process for you, or did you kind of just hit the ground running?
I kind of knew what I was getting into over the summer before I moved. I did a like an independent study with Dr. Favig going over a spacecraft operations book. So I had an idea. He had given me a pretty good overview of the road's mission and what the objectives were. I think I definitely got more than Alex initially because a lot was starting to get rolling and Alex said there was more people coming in. So I wasn't fully blind. I think the how much work would be going into it and how many, all the details having to get hammered out, that was definitely something you just have to learn as you go. But it was yeah, I mean the first year I was here, I ended up being doing my independent study and it was all about spacecraft operations and kind of taking a project management approach to it. So by the time I graduated, it set me up.
Hmm. Yeah, just kind of getting back to the UND aspect. What was your guys' like first initial impressions on, I don't know, when you got to Grand Forks, just seeing this place, working here, or even, I don't know, working remotely? I'm trying to think how to frame this, like just what drew you to UND, and then what are your thoughts? I mean, being here for a bit now, just on the entire place.
Morgan, do you want to go first?
Sh Sure. Um, so I grew up in California. So my first 2 years being online, I love seeing that it's 75 degrees outside when I'm getting blizzard warnings on my phone from UND. I didn't imagine I would come out here, to be honest. I tend to like the warmer weather, but I will say when I got out here, the one thing I was very surprised on is the facilities. So you have like UND Sat Lab, that whole laboratory, super nice. Even the ground station that we just had commissioned by ABS is really, really nice. It's super capable. Um, we're really set up to do satellite operations and not just like a university capacity, but really on par with commercials. So what UND has to offer, it was coming from an outside perspective, it was very surprising. It's definitely something that I'm comfortable staying on longer than I initially attended, just because of how much opportunity there is here.
Yeah, and going off of that, so I'm from Pennsylvania originally, the eastern side, so pretty close to Philadelphia and New York, and didn't really do that much research into Grand Forks or North Dakota in general. Didn't really know what was out here. All I knew is that it was very flat and very cold. And yeah, and that was pretty much it. I mean, definitely a big culture shock to me. I definitely grew up with different people, I would say, but I love everyone around here. I have a very big social group and a social circle that I love hanging out with. But I would say, kind of like what Morgan mentioned, is that the university is very, very capable, especially with the facilities that we have over in space studies. But the other thing I definitely wanted to mention is that how passionate everyone is regarding their work here. I think at a lot of, medium to large universities, it almost feels like you're just one piece of the entire puzzle. But I feel like here it's completely different. Everyone is very passionate about what they do. their work really shines through. And I think the administration does a very good job at showing not only the collaborative work that's going on, but everyone on an individual level. Everything in aerospace, from the aviation departments, the atmospheric sciences, and space studies, and ESSP, to all the other colleges on campus. I think they do a really good job at showing just how passionate people are about their work, both undergraduates and graduates. And I think you don't really have that at every university across the United States. Like I mentioned before, sometimes you arrive on campus and it just feels like, sometimes people are just there to maybe get a degree and get an education. But I think here it shines through that people are very interested and very passionate about what they do.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, Alex, kind of piggyback off that. What would you say mainly makes it that reason? Is it because, Grand Forks is smaller, it's like a more sense of community, or is it just literally everyone has bought into the same process, they're on the same team, they all know their part, and they're just, like you said, kind of excited to be here, and we all have one goal and like a sense of, yeah, belonging.
Yeah, I definitely think it is that sense of belonging and just naturally being in somewhat of a small town or small city. Everyone knows each other. I mean, I drive around all the time. I see Morgan's car even just running into each other on the road, nowhere near campus, or some of my other friends. And you don't really have that in a lot of the bigger cities, even in Minneapolis or really anywhere across the states. And
Okay.
the other aspect of it that I think is very important is that the university specializes and it has its own niche, which is great. We do a lot of work in the oil and energy industries, and I think people are very passionate about that. People from all over the world come to UND to study and learn about our energy programs here, as well as the aviation program, which I mean, most universities don't have. We're one of the few across the United States. And I think having those very specific niche fields kind of encourages that passionate, collaborative environment where people are here because they're interested in what they're doing, not just because they're getting a bachelor's degree in, at anything that you can just randomly pick. I think people are very thoughtful about what they study here, and I think that's great.
Hmm. Yeah, would you say you have kind of the same perspective, Morgan?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even comparing my experience here to my undergrad, it's I went to San Jose State, and you can definitely fly under the radar. When I moved out here to UND and started interacting, especially in the space studies department, it's really hard to fly under the radar. You're gonna meet people that have the same values as you. Like Alex said, it is very niche. Even space studies as a master, it's not something that you're gonna see at every university. In fact, there's only really a handful of programs out there like this. So it is really nice to be in a department where everyone's passionate about space. And coming from all these different backgrounds, you get all these unique perspectives on really everything that you're interested about. So that's definitely been my experience as well.
Okay. So yeah, kind of hopping more into the space study stuff. UND has kind of been working with SpaceX a little bit, launching satellites. Can you guys kind of talk about the relationship between UND and SpaceX or any other entities in between there, and how everyone's partnering up? Because I think a lot of people, they hear about launching satellites up, rockets up, but they don't really know kind of the work that goes into it and how everything is all partnered up on that. So yeah, I guess my question is just, yeah, what's that partnership look like?
Alex, you
Sure.
want
Yeah, I can take this one and then Morgan, if there's anything else you can think of. So, not just with UND specifically, but in the aerospace industry as a whole, I think this is valid for any type of work environment within space. There are a lot of entities involved. So, I would say, we don't necessarily communicate with SpaceX directly on a daily basis because we have our vendor AVS, who talks with the launch provider technically is SpaceX, but then there's a company in between that works with our satellites to kind of package them up and give us this hardware format to put the satellites in and put them in the rocket. So there are many entities in between just ourselves and SpaceX. And like I said, we have the vendor, and then we have the company that actually puts the satellites in the rocket. So again, I don't think that's with UND specifically, just the space industry as a whole. You'll really find that anywhere is that there's a lot of people involved, a lot of companies and businesses that try to have every little piece of the equation. At the end of the day, it's ultimately a business, and I think
Mhm.
everyone kind of wants a piece of that.
Yeah, I would say the same. We don't necessarily integrate with them, but there's just a lot of people that play into it. There's also, I mean, as far as kind of industry partners for the Space Studies Department, especially for satellite operations, we've worked with not us specifically, but kind of more of the department with the SDA, and kind of becoming or attempting to become a pipeline for developing capable satellite operators that are trained not only in a university setting, but in more of a commercial, knowing that if you're coming from UND, that you're going to be exactly what these industry partners are looking for.
Okay. Yeah, kind of jumping into like the satellites that have been launched up. What is like necessarily the purpose of each one or any one in particular? Are they tracking data, taking photos on? Can you guys kind of just run through like what they do up in space?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the best way to describe the two satellites that we have in orbit is that they're technology demonstrators. So they're not really meant to gather a whole ton of data or Earth observing information. They're not even supposed to actually take pictures of the Earth because we don't have a license for that. But what they're meant to do is to demonstrate on-orbit docking, so RPOD, rendezvous, proximity, operations, and docking. And what that means is taking two satellites that are very small, which could be very far away from each other, hundreds of kilometers, maybe even thousands of kilometers separated, and then to make them rendezvous, come together closer and closer, and eventually dock using the hardware systems and the software that they have on board. And the whole purpose, kind of going off of that in a little bit more detail, is that there's been different technologies used for docking satellites and spacecraft on orbit, but this one is very unique because it's using one technology in particular, and I don't know how much detail I can really go into that because I'm not sure how much has been publicly released. But again, overall, it's a technology demonstrator. They're not really gathering any type of climate data or pictures of Earth or astronomical data. It's nothing like that. It's meant to be a first demonstration on orbit of a very particular technology.
Yeah, and then we also have our kind of secondary objectives, like Alex had mentioned previously, the Doppler experiment. And then we're kind of starting to see a lot more integration into the classroom with um, innovation-based learning. That's something that's come out in a couple of the other departments, but it's just to apply what you're learning in class to the real world. So we're able to use this road mission. In fact, for the first kind of phase of this docking far field rendezvous, there's a lot of Python scripting that goes into that, simulations, and the hope is that the current advanced orbital mechanics class can work in partnership with ABS to kind of develop these and actually play a role in this kind of phase of the mission. So it's really cool to see kind of it being used not only just for the space operations group, but also for education and people in space studies or getting their major in aerospace engineering.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Alex, you said something that kind of caught my attention. You said you need a license to take photos of Earth. What's like I can you kind of just explain that?
Yeah, so anything satellite related, you name it, there's pretty much a license for anything. But when you are going through the licensing process of, designing, building, and eventually hopefully launching your satellites, um, yeah, so I'm pretty sure, and I could be wrong, but I think it's through NOAA. where you have to apply for a license or at least communicate with them if you're launching a satellite, because if you do intend on putting cameras up there, they want to see, okay, what is the resolution of these cameras? What is your orbit going to look like? Which countries are you going to fly over? Because within space, and especially in the satellite industry, there's a lot of dual use technology, which means that, you may have good intentions building something for civilian use, but the technology could be used for something DoD related. And so that's why there's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of red tape when it comes to launching satellites. But yeah, if you want to have a camera up there, I don't know what the exact requirements are, but yeah, you do kind of have to let the agency NOAA know. I'm pretty sure it is NOAA, but I could be wrong. And then they'll decide if you actually need a license, or if you can get an exemption, or if you can only point your satellite at like certain angles, etc. There's a lot of technicalities that kind of go into it.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that. Do you guys have any, I don't know, funny stories about just your entire time here at UND or process, or and maybe anything unexpected that popped up that you can talk about?
Morgan, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, funny times or unexpected. Um, I mean, the unexpected part. I think that's pretty. That could be a blanket statement for the entire program. There's constantly things that will be thrown at you, requirements or things that we just weren't aware of. Especially being like the first CubeSat mission. There's so much that you don't know going into it, and so things are always kind of being thrown our way, and we're just kind of having to work through it. I I'm trying to think of a funny moment. I'm kind of blanking right now. Did I buy enough time out to think of one?
Well, one thing I can think of, it's almost become like a cliche in our group. We've done this so many times where we are planning for a satellite pass, and we say like, oh, this is going to occur at XYZ UTC time, but it's actually Central Time, and we didn't know that, or it's actually the time that they have in Spain. And there's been so many occurrences where we develop like a beautiful pass plan, a beautiful flight plan, and we're ready to go. We're sitting there at console, and then we're like, oh, we actually this pass was an hour ago, or it's an hour in the future, because something so simple as just timing can really mess you up in operations. And it reminds me of that story of that spacecraft that they sent to Mars that failed because of the difference in units, metric versus standard US units. And, obviously we're not going to have a big failure like that, hopefully, fingers crossed. But it kind of goes to show you that, very simple things like unit conversions and like timing can have such a big effect on space missions. So I think that's kind of funny on one end of the spectrum, but also just it's a little bit scary because, we get so tunnel visioned into the technicalities of the code and the commands that you send. Sometimes we need to take a step back and realize the whole picture and make sure we're not missing anything.
Yeah, even that's funny you mentioned that because even last week, I we have a program GPredict, and that's what lets you know when your orbit's coming up, when you're gonna have acquisition of signal and all that kind of stuff. And I confidently sent the times to Dr. Favig to go to the ground station and check out the testing that was being done. And I had it set to Spain's ground station, so I was off by a ridiculous amount of time. So it happens a lot, like Alex said, it's those small things where you don't even think about it, and
Mhm.
it gets you.
No, yeah. Yeah, I mean, just for you guys, what has it like what is this entire process and what is this project meant to you guys just personally on like yeah, on a personal level?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say on a personal level, this is my first experience in that professional space setting, working with different partners, government, corporate entities, university. And so I, I don't, I mean, I think very few people have had that experience in any industry that they're working in until they actually get to grad school. Because I think as an undergraduate student, there are a lot of people in between who can make those high level decisions, professors, lab managers, PIs, and you don't really see what goes behind the scenes. But I think as a grad student, and it's different for every department, but you're applying to, I never had to do this, but there's plenty of students across the university who probably have to deal with applying to grants, applying for conferences, writing abstracts, writing papers. And so for me, and I'm sure for many graduate students, not only at this university, but every other graduate program around the world, they see what it's like to work behind the scenes, to see everything that goes on with all the different industry partners and university partners and government agencies. And so yeah, I mean, for me, it was just a great introduction to how the space industry works. I got to develop a very strong network of contacts. I had this amazing opportunity over 2 years ago now to go to the Space Symposium in Colorado Springs. I was sent there by the Space Studies Department. It's one of the biggest space conferences around the globe. Um, and just being there in Colorado Springs and touring all the military bases and talking with all these military people, it was quite the experience. I don't think there's anything like it. Going into restricted facilities, getting permission to look at all these, classified computer systems, and even if it's just momentarily. I mean, of course, we're not allowed to take pictures or really memorize any of this stuff, but just being there, seeing what it's like in that type of military setting and how the government works with, again, with universities and how this MOU is forming the Memorandum of Understanding between UND and the Space Force, just seeing how that has grown over the past few years. So for me, I think it was just perfect timing. I started out when a lot of this new funding came in from the state to develop these partnerships and develop this mission. And so I think it was a combination of luck and just the passion that I have for the space industry.
Yeah, I love that ending because I feel very similarly. When it for me, I had my background was in business. I was in hospitality management, and a lot of that was operations. I knew I wanted to enter into the space industry. I didn't necessarily know how. And when I started this program, it even nearing the end, I wasn't 100% sure where it was going to lead me. And when I got the opportunity to join Rhodes and come out here to UND and actually be a part of this mission, a lot opened up. My independent research was all about project management frameworks for university CubeSat missions, and it's great to do research and to look into these things and see how you can kind of mitigate the inherent risks in this setting and in this type of missions. But to then have the opportunity to apply what you learn in your research and see what actually works, it's been a really cool opportunity, and it's definitely helped kind of bridge the gap between coming from a business background and getting into something more technical. So yeah, like Alex said, it's a little bit of luck, timing. It's just being, you know, being so invested into space and knowing you want to get there. You just want to put yourself in those positions to where things like this, eventually it's your turn. Yeah, it definitely worked out. But
Yeah, and then last question for you guys. If you had literally any advice for people going into a similar field as you guys or just going into grad school, what would that be?
I would say if they're going into a similar field, whether it's in space or aviation or aerospace in general, I would just say definitely keep an open mind, because I've seen a few instances where, certain people, they may come into the program and they have kind of this predefined idea of what it may look like based off of their own experiences and what they've done in the past. And nine times out of 10, it's nothing like you predict. There's so many things that you're going to learn that you never would have thought of before. So I would say definitely keep an open mind and understand that space is a very niche and a very small community. It is a very small industry at the end of the day. So you'll end up kind of knowing a lot of people, both government, private, and civil. But I would say more general going into grad school, um, kind of understand and I would say understand that this is a time to know where you kind of fit in terms of your interests and your passions. And it might sound a little bit cliche, I know, but it's almost like a time to find yourself. You're you have an undergraduate degree, you've gone through the process of taking courses, and obviously you should still focus on your courses and your research, but also kind of just keep an open mind and find who you are as like a person, as an individual, and what really interests you and what you want to get out of life in terms of a career, a social circle. Because in grad school you have a little bit more freedom in terms of scheduling and what you kind of do day to day. So it's almost like a luxury as opposed to having a very rigid undergraduate course schedule where you take your credits, maybe you're involved in a lab and research, and that's it. I mean, your mind is just cluttered with so many new pieces of information. So I think that's the wonderful thing about grad school is that there's a little bit more fluidity to it in what you can and can't do and what really interests you and how you want to really take in the few years that you have in grad school.
Yeah, it definitely goes by a lot quicker than you think. And the classes, I mean, that's the nice part about space studies is it is interdisciplinary. So you're going to be taking courses from teachers where it may not align with your background or what exactly you want to pursue. But like Alex was saying, space is very niche, and it you really have to have kind of a broad understanding of everything. I mean, even with the Rhodes mission being more on the technical side, the management classes I've taken have really helped. The law and policy court classes have come up more times than not. So being open-minded when you're coming in and taking those classes and just seeing how you can frame what you're learning into what you're interested in definitely helped me get through some of the ones where I thought maybe I wouldn't like it, and it honestly ended up being super helpful. So definitely keeping that open mind.
All right. Well, that'll be it for our first episode of the UND Grad Talk podcast. Morgan and Alex, thank you guys for showing up, giving us the time, explaining what you guys do. Truly appreciate it. And yeah, thank you guys.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, for the rest of our viewers, we will be back next month with our next guest to be determined. So thank you everyone for tuning in and have a good rest of your week.